Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's get this thing going, baby.
All right, let's do it. So, Michigan says it may leave the Big Ten as a result of the punishment against Jim Harbaugh and their program, the 3-game suspension to end the season. Do you think the Irish and Wolverines should form their own conference going forward? Do you buy or sell that?
I sell this idea, and this is just I'm going to be kind of simple about it. I don't want anything to do with Michigan. I don't think Notre Dame should want to associate themselves with Michigan in any way after everything that's going on. I think that Notre Dame has, and not to sound snobby, they've set a different standard than Michigan has had. And I don't think you need to allow, people, it's point blank. This is Michigan's second ongoing investigation this season of cheating scandals. I just don't think Notre Dame needs to be associated with anyone that wants that kind of attention around their program.
This is a sell for me as well, and I was hoping that John Kristofik, I was envisioning John, as soon as we asked this question, being the first to chime in with the sell, and he did not disappoint. I'm very glad, and I agree as well. Why do Michigan's work for them?
What has Michigan ever done for Notre Dame? Notre Dame would do all the legwork in that situation to basically regain the public's image of Michigan.
That's exactly right. Why help Michigan out and let them dig themselves out of this hole? Notre Dame doesn't need that. If Michigan is really serious, because as John said, I don't think they're leaving the Big Ten. It's all
led by Dave Portnoy.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I think that's the funniest part is your program is now run, or the face of your program is Dave Portnoy and cheating Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, Michigan is so intent on being the martyrs in this whole situation. They want to act like, woe is us. Everyone's out to get us and this whole thing.
I came up with the perfect analogy for this, by the way.
Let Michigan find out what it's like to actually have to go their own if that's what they actually decide to do. Because I don't think that they could cut it the way they think that they could cut it.
Nope.
They've always considered themselves so above the fray, but you're not. You're not above the fray. You're out there rolling in the mud is what you are. So what's your analogy?
So I was thinking about this today. What's going on with Michigan is like someone starting. So say you owned a house. It reminds me of someone who literally just starts a fire in their own house, watches their house burn down, and then starts a GoFundMe account for the repair costs
to build
their house back up.
Rebuild my house.
And then cry about it and being like, oh, my house, it's gone. When they're literally the person who set the house on fire. That is the analogy I came up with earlier today.
Yes. And I brought a bonus quote that I found today from, and I know a lot of Notre Dame people are anti-Paul Finebaum, but Finebaum has been the one out there banging the drums since day one.
Now.
He's like jab, uppercut. He's given Michigan the business, and he was on the Matt Berry show yesterday. And here's a quote from Paul Finebaum on Michigan. Quote, as somebody who deals with fan bases from primarily one conference, but it branches out a little bit broader beyond that, I've never come in contact with a fan base that's as insecure and is consumed with their own self-worth in a false way. There's no more sniveling fan base in America than Michigan either. End quote, Paul Finebaum. I mean, could anyone say it any better than that right there? I don't think so.
I don't think so. And I think it'd be funny if I think there's bigger issues coming than what Michigan realizes. I don't know how much you've been reading, but I've heard a lot of this is now getting tied to sports gambling as well. I think we're just on the edge of some deeper issues that Michigan is going to get into. And I guess if Michigan gets kicked out of the Big Ten, who would want that on their hands? A team that potentially could have, and I'm not saying it's like SMU's death penalty or anything like that, but who wants a team that's going to be basically so damaged, right? It's like sometimes when you get out of a bad relationship, who wants to date the person who's damaged? I feel like that's the same way with Michigan is who's going to want to take on that project of damaged goods? Who wants to help lead the charge of restoring Michigan's public image.
Right. And this, from Andrew, the Michigan administrators are the most deplorable. All you have to do is check and see if Stalions expensed his travel and tickets to the games. If he did, they're guilty. And that's going to be the question. Did they hide the money trail in all this? Because this guy wasn't just out there spending thousands of dollars. They have tried to claim this plausible deniability bit. And, that's what they're trying to blame this rogue, low level.
It's funny that they fired him and now he's not talking to anyone. So
yeah, exactly. Because they've probably cut him another check to keep quiet. And as long as he keeps quiet, there'll be something for him in the end. But it's just they've tried to blame Stalions for everything. And there's going to be more that comes out because more keeps coming out of this every day. And I think it's hilarious. And again, they've tried to make themselves out to be, they haven't denied that they were doing any of this. Their whole defense is everybody else is doing it. So there shouldn't be any reason we should have to suffer the consequences, even though you would think that as long as this story has been out there by now, if anyone else was doing anything even remotely similar to this, buying tickets, sending people, recording signals from the stands during the game, like we would have heard about it by now, but you haven't.
Yeah.
Because again, it's one thing to steal signals, but it's another thing to go to these depths to do it the way that Michigan was. And apparently Jim Harbaugh is a big Judge Judy fan. Did you see the clip of Jim Harbaugh and his dad sitting in the Judge Judy audience? Have you seen that one? I just saw that.
I did see that.
It's just levels, man. Levels. So after Jimbo Fisher was fired at Texas A&M, do you feel differently about Notre Dame's season opener at College Station next year?
I do feel differently. I think it's more advantageous for Notre Dame because I think it just shows the overall lack of grounding or stability that the Texas A&M program has as a whole. Like, I don't think Jimbo Fisher was doing a horrible job, but when you're getting, SEC booster money, there's obviously a lot more expectations, but to just get rid of a guy with 2 games left and all of that money left, it shows that there's a lot of unrest from the highest position of power amongst, Texas A&M football. And so anything that adds, to again, the lack of stability for Notre Dame, I think is advantageous because now you're going to have a first-year head. This is going to be whoever they decide to go with head coach is going to be their first game. You don't know if they're going to bring in a new offense, if they're going to bring in a new quarterback. Like, everything is in question now, and I think the more question marks, obviously, the better for Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, there's talent on the roster still right now, but I mean,
guys will transfer now.
Deion Sanders probably going to go try to raid that A&M roster this offseason. Yeah, that's exactly right. You're going to have transfers. You're going to have a new coach, a new system. The whole thing, everything is going to be different. So I absolutely feel differently about it. I was never, look, again, the environment, it's going to be a good college football environment. It's going to be hot down there because
I would say that's going to add some probably excitement now for the fans as new head coach, opening game. That's when like you've completely gotten rid of what's happened last season, and the new expectation is we're the greatest team again. You turn the blinders to everything that's happened in the past, and you're now just focused on the excitement of this upcoming season. So that might work against Notre Dame in some ways.
Yeah. I will be really curious to see who they end up landing. They're going to shell out a lot of money to try to get somebody down there. But look, it's a very large alumni base. It's a very rich alumni base, obviously, based on the fact that they were able to raise that money for the payout. But Andrew is saying he disagrees. What if Urban is the coach?
Urban's not coaching anywhere.
Well, we don't know that though. But I don't think that Urban even, from day one is going to put together something so formidable that's going to be like, oh, I'm going to worry about that.
Let's be honest about the situation. I think there's 2 realistic ways that you go about hiring. You go the route of basically a Jimbo Fisher again, a big name. But what big name wants to come to Texas A&M after seeing what's happened to Sumlin and ever since they joined the SEC? outside of 1 year with Johnny Manziel, Texas A&M hasn't been good in the SEC.
And that was my point.
How is that attractive
it's not been a
top
program,
level coach?
Yeah, it's not been a program that's consistently won. There are a lot of resources and facilities there, but all those resources, facilities, they just hired a coach who had won a national championship at his last stop. What's it got him? It's not a play. It's a place that has proven to be tough to win at for a long time.
Right. And then you go the potential route of like a Mike Elko or, a really good, coordinator that's kind of up and coming. But like, who is that? I don't think that's sexy enough to those boosters and those high payers, right? Like, who wants to go out and pay this buyout to Jimbo and all this money just to turn around and pay Mike Elko? Right.
But look,
what are you going to do?
Andrew is saying, you read a report, A&M's willing to pay $15 million a year. I think they're going to land a big-time coach. Jimbo Fisher was a big-time coach. Again, he had won a national championship. That doesn't guarantee anything. Look at the recruiting class that he put together. They had the number one recruiting class last year. What did that get them? It got them absolutely nothing. So
I think you're looking at maybe like a Lane Kiffin. I've heard Cliff Kingsbury's name floated around a little bit, but I don't think he wants to come back to football. And if you're coming back to football, who wants to step into the Texas A&M mess?
Well, and why would you want Cliff Kingsbury even? No disrespect to Cliff Kingsbury, but he didn't win at Texas Tech. He was going to be the offensive coordinator, in college, and then he gets hired as an NFL head coach, and he got to draft his guy. He drafted Kyler Murray after they had just drafted Rosen the year before that. Again, like what did that get anybody? So, you can bring in a gimmicky offense and think that you're going to light up the scoreboard, but that guy hasn't shown that he can win.
I thought a pretty funny thing was someone was like, it's going to come down to Nike money versus oil money. Who's going to shell out the most, referencing Manning over at Oregon right now.
Andrew, you make any comments like
I was going to say that one
have to ban you from
that one kind of scared me with that one. I'm not going to lie.
Lance Leopold with talent is scary. You're absolutely right. And there were all these rumors about, Lance Leopold is going to be the Michigan State head coach. I haven't seen any of that announced. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that he sticks around for at least a couple more years. Leopold staying in the Big 12, like with what he has done already with Texas
needs
and
a quarterback
Oklahoma,
to stay healthy.
With Texas and Oklahoma leaving, the Big 12 is up for the taking. I mean, and it's going to be more entertaining with Dion coming in and the Arizona schools coming in and Utah obviously coming in. So, that'll at least up the degree of difficulty a little bit. But the Big 12 is going to be up for the taking for the next few years with Texas and Oklahoma leaving. So, he might be able to go get more money someplace else. But with all these super conferences, I don't think it's going to be, if he were to take the Michigan State job or even the Texas A&M job, it's not going to be easier to win in any of these bigger, conferences than the chance he's going to have to win where he is right now, even though it's not a traditional football school, obviously.
And that was, I saw the hot take from Stephen A. this week about, if I'm Deion Sanders, I'm going to Texas A&M. No, you're not. How does that benefit Deion Sanders? Because he's going to a place that has higher expectations. He can get just the same amount of recruits and the quality of recruits at Colorado. Deion Sanders is what brings the recruits, not the Texas A&M or the Colorado or, what school you're at. And so when you're at a school that is all in on you, you don't have to worry about booster money. You don't have to worry about, as high of expectations of Texas A&M and the SEC. I think Deion's a horrible fit there. And so, again, and it goes into what you're saying is, who wants to take on that kind of responsibility, essentially, at the end of the day, when there's probably paths of less resistance elsewhere in the country.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jimbo was still something like 20 games over 500 in his time at Texas A&M. Tommy, I honestly don't remember what I said on Thursday. So if I said, I don't remember what I said. I remember wondering where you were, I think, toward the end of the show or something like that, but you were gone. But I don't know. I don't know. So players are going to be allowed to play. Players are currently allowed to play in up to 4 games during the regular season and preserve their redshirt year of eligibility. Last year, you remember, going into the bowl games, the NCAA gave a bowl game exemption, meaning you could play in 4 regular season games plus a 5th game in the bowl and still keep the red shirt. That is still in effect this year. Do you buy or sell that?
I buy the rule. I love the rule. I think, if you're doing 5 of 13 games, that's under 50% of total season. I think that would land, somewhere in the 40% somewhere. I'm not sure the exact number, but that makes sense. You're not playing more than half the season. And I think it's a good way to get an idea of where, some of those borderline players stand, right? It got brought up at Marcus Freeman's press conference, right? Like Notre Dame got to a point where they had seen enough out of Faison where they needed to convert him into a guy or essentially burn kind of his redshirt year, right? And so I think it gives a fair evaluation of where your players are at, and it allows you to do kind of probably what's best for the player at the same time. Do you preserve a year, or do you feel like their talents are enough to get them on the field now and kind of expedite their football career a little bit?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's great. I think the reason they're doing this is because of like players. You're seeing more players opt out of bowl games every year, and you're also seeing transfer
Right.
portal. Like look at Notre Dame last year. You had Drew Pine decide he was entering the transfer portal and was going to leave right away, and then you had Michael Mayer as well as Isaiah Foskey opt out of the bowl game. So you had 3 prominent guys right there alone. So their thinking is, well, you've got more guys who are going to miss the bowl game now. So you keep it to 4 during the regular season, then you get in the 5th. Like last year, it would have been nice to know earlier so you could manage your roster and decide, well, we can still play this guy for the 4th game and not have to save it for the bowl game and that kind of thing. Well, now it's on the books. You get 4 games during the regular season, plus you get the bowl game. So I think it's great, again, because you don't know what things are going to look like. Like as of right now, there's a question. Is Sam, Notre Dame's bowl eligible? Is Sam Hartman going to play in a bowl, or is he going to opt out? Who knows? So I think that it's great going in and you look at player development and the whole thing and you get the extra game. I think it's going to be good for everybody. And I think it's going to be especially good that the rule is already on the books and everyone knows what the rule is so they can manage their rosters accordingly. Tommy, yes, about the Marine Corps birthday. The Marine Corps birthday. Yes. I mean, come on. Do the Marine, like it's not enough that we have Veterans Day, the Marine Corps, you have to the Marine Corps birthday. Nobody else celebrates the birthday, but the Marine Corps does. Whatever. Happy Marine Corps birthday, though, Tommy. See, if you would have been here last year, you would have heard me say that. I'm pretty sure I did say that. Didn't I, Jesse? Didn't I say happy Marine Corps birthday? Are you frozen up? And Jesse is gone. Stunned silence. So we'll have to wait and see if Jesse can manage to get back. Again, like Braylon James, for example, as of right now, has played in 3 games. So Braylon James could play in one more game, one more regular season game, and then the bowl game as well, and still preserve the red shirt eligibility. Do you have some connection issue there?
Yeah. Hang on 1 second. I'm going to leave this one. I'll be back in like 2 seconds.
All right. So what I was saying, there he is. He's back on the other one now.
My home internet just dropped out of nowhere. Literally
wow.
just dropped. Like I've never had that happen before. I tried to switch browsers and it was like, you have no internet connection. I was like, what do you mean? I work like 8 hours, 9 hours a day in here and never have internet drops. So that was really weird.
All right. Let me ask you this. You're a bigger NBA fan than probably most of us. I know we've got, here and there NBA fans. They're doing this in-season tournament this year. Michael Wilbon just like ripped the in-season tournament to shreds here recently. What do you think of the in-season? Maybe you could explain the in-season tournament. Do you like the in-season tournament? How they're doing this whole thing?
Yeah. So, again, for the listeners that care, because I know there's not a big capacity of NBA fans, this new in-season tournament is a long complaint of the NBA is, they play all these 82 games, but they're not playing defense, in game 20 like they're playing in game 80 or in the playoffs, right? So how do we ratchet up the intensity of these games kind of earlier in the season? That's what the in-game season is supposed to kind of, solve the solution is create more meaningful games throughout the season. And so what you do is I can't remember the exact, over the last three or 4 years, your composite record was taken and you were paired in groupings of teams with similar records, right? Over the last 3 to 4 years. And you are now in pool play. You play each of these teams like every Friday and Tuesday. So there's going to be in-season tournament games tonight. And they're a part of your regular season record, but they count towards your regular season record. But again, you're in this group play and you only play them on Fridays and Tuesdays. After you've played X amount of games, there's a winner from each pool. There's a wild card from each side. And then it's basically just like a tournament. You play each other and there's going to be a champion, and the champion team gets cash incentive.
I mean, that all sounds more complicated than I thought it was. They've got like special uniforms. They jazz up the court and all that kind of stuff. To me, it makes it sound interesting. Like it at least when you've got an 82 game schedule, I don't know, it kind of jazzes it up. I'm not as fired up. Like Michael Wilbon wants to take everything back to the Michael Jordan era.
Yeah, I was gonna say Michael Wilbon's just old, like get off my lawn type of guy. I'm not surprised that he came out, and I don't know what his specific points were. I'll just keep it after giving that, the overview of the format. I think it's great. Out of the games I've watched, I've seen like the first time they did it.
There's definitely more intensity kind of going on because they're
better games,
right?
Yeah, like I think overall the quality of game has gone up in these games. And you're seeing stars play the entire game. You're seeing them taking it seriously. I just find it as like the NBA came up with a solution to a problem, and I think their solution is a valid solution to the problem. We've seen better games, and so if we're seeing better games, and it means funky courts and funky jerseys, whatever. I'm a fan. I like it. I don't like to see the same stuff over and over again.
Andrew says you don't need to watch the NBA till the playoffs. The playoffs are 3 months long. True. Season itself. True. But I think that's part of why the NBA is doing this, like to kind of add some different interest.
Right. To keep you excited the whole way.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So after the Cubs hired Notre Dame alum Craig Counsell as their manager, the Brewers are going to hire his former Irish head coach and his former Milwaukee Brewers bench coach, Pat Murphy, to replace him. What'd you think about that news? I was pretty shocked by that.
Yeah, it was the first time you saw it when I sent you that tweet the other day.
It was.
I always love when
I got up.
I love finding things that you haven't found yet and presenting them to you, especially something like this, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but like Craig Counsell coached at Notre Dame, and then didn't Pat Murphy come from Arizona State to Notre Dame after he was on Craig Counsell's staff at Notre Dame? Can you give me – I know they were together at Notre Dame, right?
So Pat Murphy became Notre Dame baseball coach at the end of the 80s and then into the 90s, prior to the Paul Mainieri era.
Okay.
And then Counsell played for Murphy at Notre Dame in that stretch. And then Murphy leaves Notre Dame, becomes Arizona State head baseball coach, where he had a lot of success, but there were some, like recruiting violations, some things like that at the end of his Arizona State tenure that led to him being dismissed there. And then, Counsell goes on to a Major League Baseball career, wins a World Series, wins a couple World Series, I believe, actually, and then ends up being the Milwaukee Brewers manager. He is from Wisconsin. So he was like a hometown boy going home. Murphy, because of the stuff that happened at Arizona State, was never able to get another college job. And so Counsell hires him as his bench coach. And he was his bench coach there for what, 8 years or whatever.
A long time.
He was there in Milwaukee, real successful. And so now I kind of assumed that Murph was coming with Counsell to the Chicago Cubs to continue that role. But the Brewers decide, hey, we're gonna roll with Pat Murphy, who's an interesting character and fairly intense guy, especially for Major League Baseball. So it's gonna be really interesting.
I think it comes full circle, and I think that the Brewers had to be butthurt in their final. I think they were really mad at Craig Counsell for I don't think they had a problem with him leaving. I think they had a problem with him leaving to the organization that he decided to go to. And so it became, what can we do to get back at Craig Counsell now? Do we take a coach away from him? What are we doing? And I honestly think that's a big factor for why, because you just said Pat Murphy is really not like MLB manager material, but I think it was solely to get back at Craig Counsell.
I mean, he wasn't when he became the bench coach, but he's obviously been around the majors for a while now because of Craig Counsell. So, it'll be really interesting to see how that works out. The bench coach is essentially the guy who is sort of the, like he's like the hand, like in royalty terms, like he's the hand of the king, basically. He's the guy who's like giving counsel. He's like,
when he gets
the guy who's giving the advice on the strategy and those kind of things.
When Counsell gets ejected, Murphy's the next guy in.
Right. And now Murphy is the guy. So you're going to have, that rivalry is going to hit. And I think it's really interesting because the Brewers owner, Mark Attanasio, last week had this to say about Counsell leaving Milwaukee. Quote, "We've lost Craig, but I've reflected on this. Craig has lost us and our community." I just think that it's just like, it's so upper management. It is so ownership of him. Like to try to, he could have discarded Counsell at any moment, but now Counsell leaves him and it's like, oh, we're stung, we're hurt, He's like trying to make it like it's this family situation when ownership, it's never about family. It's about
the money.
It's about the money. That's right. And Counsell left. He had a better opportunity. They weren't going to pay him what he wanted, and he wanted to get out and get where the resources are a little bit better. And I think everybody's going to be better for it in the long run. I don't know if the Brewers are going to be better for it, but I think Counsell and the Cubs are going to be better for it.
I love that the Cubs, again, this reminds, I don't know if we were on the show. I think I told this to Vince. This just reminds me so much of Renteria and David Ross. They had Renteria kind of, wear the face of some ugly years. They gathered this pool of talent, and then once they had that talent, they're like, all right, let's bring in a little bit more experienced head coach, aka Craig Counsell, replacing David Ross. And now let's take this thing to the next level. We got the pool of players we want. I'm assuming now they're going to get a big deal in the offseason with the money and adding Craig Counsell. And so when you combine that with a high-level manager, and some would argue probably the best in-game manager in all of baseball, and I think that was Ross's biggest deficiency last year, was probably being one of the poorest in-game managers. I think you're going to Craig Counsell might add 10 wins alone to this team by being the manager this season. So I'm very excited about this.
The way he managed that pitching staff, that bullpen in Milwaukee with much more limited resources, he's going to have a lot more resources.
Bring up that stymie comment.
Now. Which one?
Nobody loses Milwaukee. There's a reason it's called Wrigley North.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's every time we've ever been to a game up there, they were Cubs Brewers games, and it was Wrigley North. And Andrew's saying it does come full circle. Major League manager position was dead 2 years ago. GMs essentially managing, now managers back in vogue. And I think that both of these guys, the Brewers front office might be giving Pat Murphy some data, but Pat Murphy's going to largely do what Pat Murphy wants to do. I think you can guarantee that. I have no doubt about that. And I think Craig Counsell is a very sharp guy. And again, like the way he ran things there in Milwaukee, and moving him to where he does have more resources behind him. I think that you're exactly right. He's going to be worth at least 10 wins next year.
Why is Tommy Guns always coming at me, always telling me what I'm doing wrong? Why can't you tell me what I'm doing right?
By the way, our buddy who was talking about my crunching at the start of the show, I think like I caught myself because I've got, like the crushed ice in my cup. I did catch myself before I started, like chewing on a little ice cube every now and then during the show. So I think that's probably what he was referring to. So I apologize if like I never thought about my, because it wasn't like I was chewing a mouthful of ice. It was always, like a little one, but that's probably what was coming through that he was talking about. I apologize if that's come through in the microphone.
Now you're very self-conscious.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get the bigger ice cubes so that I'm not chewing on it. TD4ND wants to know about your engineering background, Jess.
I'm a civil engineer. That's a broad term. I say I mainly do like land development and hydrology design.
You didn't say that with a whole lot of enthusiasm.
Well, it's not the most fun thing at times. It's not as exciting as this.
It's much more stressful than this, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is more open to your interpretation type stuff. Engineering is a lot of like this. There is an answer, and we need to get to the answer. And getting to the answer is a little bit stressful at times.
Tommy's inviting you to watch some state championship Ohio football. Is Massillon in the championship? Are they like in the semifinals? Where are they right now?
I can't say I keep up with my Ohio State or high school football, but I got plans. I'm a Cavs season ticket holder, baby. I got 2 games this weekend to attend.
Oh, okay. You're a season ticket holder?
Like a
partial package.
Season ticket holder. So about 20 games because there's about 40 home games and we're half of that. So about
you
20.
And the guards and the Cavs and just
a sports fan,
making it happen. Yeah.
I more exposure gives me more to talk about, more things to see, more players to see. All
Absolutely.
of the above.
Absolutely. All right. Well, good stuff. Good whiteboard from you tonight. Enjoyed it as always. Thanks to everyone for being. It turned out to be a little bit of a lively show here tonight. So anytime Tommy starts mixing it up, we know it's going to come to life. Hit the like button on your way out, and of course, subscribe, rate, and review. And we will talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.